Hello and welcome to this new episode of The Other Side Of. The Other Side Of is a series where I talk to individuals who come from different professions. And since the umbrella brand is the Values Workshop, I intend to probe you on things which are everyday issues where your values are tested. It's a free flowing interview. You can ask questions back as well if at any point you feel something. For my guest, I have with me Prashant Ramamurthy. He is in the coffee business and he's been an entrepreneur for some time now. So welcome to the show. One of the questions that I'm trying to make up as I go along is every entrepreneur seems like he knows the business. When you talk to them, when they talk about the business, a lot of them talk about any kind of aspect very confidently. Is it the real entrepreneurial streak that comes over, or is it fibbing? What really happens when somebody talks to you about your business?
So I think this is a very interesting perspective to start with. If you look at it, I think we can probably look at it from let's say before entrepreneurship became fashionable, and let's say now entrepreneurship being a fashionable option that's available to youngsters. Now, why I'm saying this is earlier on, if you were to ask somebody the same question, perhaps they would come across a little muddled, a little confused, or probably a little unsure about what they're doing in life. And entrepreneurship that time possibly wasn't as so cool and possibly wasn't as well defined in a manner of speaking. So which meant like, haan theek hai, matlab dhanda hai, I know what this particular trade is. I'm supposed to kind of be doing something here. I know some numbers. I know something here. Perhaps there was a lack of if I can use the word, scientific approach to the whole area of business, right? But I think now, thanks to a certain culture that's been propagated across through mainstream, through the success stories that exist today, there's a certain definition that has come about of being an entrepreneur himself, which means like there is a certain approach that is acceptable or defined. There's a certain nuance in which you kind of go about it. There's a certain methodology in which you kind of approach or even speak, right? So which means like what happens today is, yes, when you ask me something about it, I will kind of throw some numbers. I will throw some mumbo jumbo. I will kind of, give you some stats related to my business. I'll probably, I'll be a little more nuanced about the whole thing. Now, this could be either experience, it could be more exposure to the, fact that this is how it's being done, or perhaps a whole lot of other people are doing it. Could be, herd mentality, whatever. I mean, like, there are so many other nuances that come into the picture, and therefore there's a learned behavior, I would call it, right? So therefore, I think in that sense, there is this post and pre-entrepreneurship, kind of a scenario I would look at, right? Yeah, I mean, a few years back when I started it, perhaps, let's say, I would have been a little raw about the whole thing. I would have been trying to kind of, still guess it, navigate my way through somehow. But given the fact that today there is so much more exposure happening, there is so much more information that's available out there, I think there is a certain nuance that comes into the pitch and that comes into, what one is talking about.
Okay. I want to actually concentrate on one word that you use, one term you use called mumbo jumbo. The reason why I'm trying to penetrate that is it has many connotations, and because I come from advertising, I keep hearing a lot of big words about everything, including being a writer. I use There have been times when I'm forced to use big words because the client says they may mean anything, but you have to use them. And especially when I'm writing scripts and stuff like that. And personally, I am a person who doesn't like to mince words and come to the meaning and trying to connect a lot more. And I find it a hindrance doing that kind of work, because I think even if there is a larger audience out there, honesty should be one of the things that you're trying to achieve. Not that all of us are like 100% there, but at least the attempt has to be there. Now, the problem that I find is that we use words like mumbo jumbo sheerly because it is so, the lack of definition of what we are proposing is mostly not clear for all the parties involved. How do you look at this term, or am I making too much of a small term? Because that also may be an issue.
Yeah, I think sometimes it just becomes an easy way out, right? When you really don't want to get into too much of the nuances out there, you kind of tend to, end up using words like that. And assuming that, the other person kind of gets the gist of what you're trying to say, and you just carry on, as another dear friend of mine would say, move the life kind of a thing out there. Let's continue. Yeah, I think so. I think so, right? Otherwise, I mean, there's really not too much to the word itself, right? When there's a certain lack of clarity, or there's a certain lack of intent to kind of clarify something out there, or when you want an easy way out, you kind of tend to use, words like this is what I would kind of,
I think you really brought it down to a very practical level. Okay, let me then put it the other way around, because now this has opened for all creatives. We've always disliked the servicing and the planning and very strategic way of looking at things. We like a little looseness so that we can come up with our own version of how we perceive the brand or the creative. Do you think it is really a hindrance to know strategy and use words and know the import of them? Because a lot of words, I realize over a period of being a writer, have come after the experience, so that it is easier to explain to somebody else, but you've already had the experience. So it is far more, to use a term, holistic. In your own experience, I know this is how it happens, and then I create a word or to communicate what has happened to me. So how do you look at, say, defining the truth of something through words necessarily? And it's an open-ended question. You can take it anywhere, not necessarily.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So I'm kind of getting the gist of where you're, where the conversation is going right now. So actually, when you look at, I think the essence of whatever the business that you're in, let's say communication business, or let's say brand building, for example, or even in everyday life, I think there must be a certain clarity one needs to have in terms of when it comes to communication, whether you're communicating to your child, to your spouse, to your managers, and consumers at large, say, for example. Now, that clarity comes from, clarity in communication comes from a certain clarity in thought, right? Which means like you need to have a certain, what should I say, clear-cut notion of what is this, who is this for, why is it for, and therefore what should be the end objective. I mean, when you put it in such lay terms, what happens is, I think it brings about a lot more clearer picture to the other person as well, whoever it is, in whatever context that you want to kind of use this, let's say, these steps. It becomes very critical, especially in a workplace, especially in let's say when it comes to communicating to outside of your immediate family circle, simply because there's no ambiguity that kind of comes about. Now, this becomes important simply also because the fact saying that today when you look at a written word. So for example, let's say if we were corresponding right now through letters, I wouldn't necessarily understand the tonality of what your question was, right? Voice gives that tonality, and word up form. Good, bad, ugly, I think depends on the use of body language, so on and so forth. So there's no ambiguity in that sense, trying to say that I'm being hostile right now, for example, right? It's very clear, saying that this is a conversation happening and certain words are used to convey certain meanings out here, so on and so forth. Now, at a larger context, when you start kind of bucketing them into, let's say, this is communication related, this is related to my child, this is related to the spouse, this is related to a whole lot of other, let's say, employees, for example, or at a factory level. Now, words start playing a very, very crucial role in a couple of aspects. One is they are able to send out a message, which is the intended message, and B, there is no ambiguity about that, which means there is no misunderstanding in any form other than what is intended. Now, in a larger context, this starts becoming very, very critical simply because there is no need to repeat. There's no need to kind of reinvent. There's no need to kind of, it saves a lot of hassles. It saves a lot of trouble in terms of, back and forth kind of a scenario out there. Now, let's say if you were to kind of take this into, it might just be interesting to look at it from, let's say, two extreme points of view. Let's say if there is a philosopher right now who's trying to, since you use the word holistic, let's say if he were to be giving us a discourse on, let's say, the holistic way of life, if he didn't use the right kind of words there, perhaps me as a student, as a disciple, I may not even understand the nuance of what he's trying to get at, or I might completely misunderstand what he's trying to say, which means the purpose is completely lost, right? On the other hand, let's say if there is a legal kind of a scenario where a lawyer needs to kind of present something, right? Now, if the client is not able to understand that, which most often than not, they don't understand either, right? But the fact is, at least there is a system which understands the context in which this is being said, and therefore it tries to supposedly bring, let's say, remove the ambiguity that could exist in some form, right? Hopefully, at least that's the intent. But imagine if a lawyer were to talk like a philosopher out there, that whole tonality is wrong, right? We don't kind of understand that meaning at all. It somewhere gets so lost in translation. So therefore, I'm saying there are two aspects to the entire thing. There is the words that you're going to be using, the meaning of the words, and the context in which also it's being used, I think starts playing a big role in the way we communicate. Yeah.
Okay, let me pin it down further to the business aspect itself. I'll give you an example of what recently happened. I was working with, being a writer, I always have some kind of art partner, and obviously at the other end, there is a client. So one particular set of people that I've been talking to, and this is a real issue without taking names, my art director was also not being very clear. I do not know whether he lacked the vocabulary to be precise about it. And the client also was a marketing guy. He kept, both of them talked about being in love with each other and, oh, I like this and I like this. But I found that the conversation left a lot of ambiguity. And it had happened earlier that when they were talking, this had happened earlier, and when we had to actually present stuff, at that point things went a little awry because what was being understood was very convenient. And I use the word convenient knowingly here. It was not by chance. It was that I thought, even while the conversation was happening, that both of them are trying not to pin the issue. And I found it was a waste of time, because effectively tomorrow we do have to present some work, and he is going to judge by whether he likes it or not. So why can't all of them be clear, was my thinking at that point of time. But since the flow of conversation went that way and client was happy and this guy is happy, it was first time kind of meeting. So everybody's shaking hands, then who am I to bell the cat at that point? But I did not feel comfortable about it because personally, when I go, I tell you right away what is going to be the intended output, or whether I'm in or not, and whether I'm uncomfortable with some aspect, or what I'm not going to deliver for sure. And it has only helped me. Like, obviously, you lose something. So suppose I am going to tell you some truth that you will not like. It is a possibility that you will not come back to me. But I find that you may not come back to me, but you respect it and you send somebody else who you think will match with my kind of sensibility. That has happened a lot, and my work keeps on happening in a very grounded kind of manner, instead of oh, I thought so, oh, you meant this. Those kind of problems are avoided. So as a business person, do you think that happens to you internally also? Sometimes when you have more than one people working on the project, say 3-4 people are working, that clarity I have found, even if it is a unhappy clarity for the other people,
So
it's better to
maybe
speak it up.
yeah. So maybe this is part of the the experience of, let's say, being an entrepreneur, where I think you need to start setting those objectives, setting those goals. You need to start setting clarity, with those objectives and those goals. So which means, like I said, to kind of, reiterate the earlier point I was making, saying that if I don't understand what I am doing right now, then it becomes difficult for me to kind of convey the point. So at some level, I think it becomes critical for business leaders, or a leader. I mean, like, forget being a business leader, right? I'm just saying a leader of as the head of your organization. You need to kind of start setting that clarity, which means that you need to do all the hard work of thinking for others, at the risk of repeating, at the risk of dumbing it down to, the smarter folks in your organization. But the fact is, at least there is no ambiguity. Everybody is on the same page. And I think, I know I'm consciously bringing in the term, the words leadership here, or leaders here again, simply because I think that becomes an essential skill set as the organization starts growing, right? So there is two things that you'll be doing. You will be envisioning, let's say, the company's goals and dreams, not only for yourself, but for your employees. But you'll also need to kind of, crystallize that in some form, dumb it down so that even the support staff are able to understand where the company is headed. And that becomes very critical as a business leader for you to kind of encapsulate in the most easiest form so that everybody is able to do that. So net, what I'm trying to really say is, like, whether you like it or not, as an entrepreneur, one of the skill sets that you need to start learning as quickly as possible is to be able to illustrate your points as clearly, as what should I say, as simply and as effectively as possible to your organization. And over a period of time, I think this starts translating into your other conversations as well.
One of the things that now I want to bring up is contrarian to what I've been asking. What if you, this is a very practical question to ask. Like, one of the feelings that I had with the example that I gave you was, both of them were deliberately trying to do that. They may be clear inside their heads, but people use words to befuddle the other party, or genuinely leave it open-ended so that they can take what meaning they want later. How much is honesty and truth important in achieving the sense of clarity that you're talking about?
So I want to look at that this question somewhat differently. Actually, where I'm coming from. Again, if I were to wear my entrepreneurship hat here, I think the big difference really is going to be this skill set that one needs to develop, right? Which I said. So what I'm trying to really drive here is, If I don't have that clarity, it becomes my loss in some form, right? When I say loss, I don't mean necessarily monetarily. I mean, it's my, let's say, shortcomings of not being able to communicate whatever the point is to whoever it is. So, which means it becomes very critical for a successful, this is what I believe personally, for being a successful entrepreneur, you need to have effective communication skills. When I say effective, I don't mean necessarily just illustrating a point, but how and when also becomes very critical, right? I mean, the things that you say, why you're saying it, and how effectively are you saying it, so that everybody gets the point, becomes a very crucial aspect, learning from you. Now, the other way of looking at it is saying that I don't know. I think all conversations need to be honest, right? I mean, that's a basic nature. So, for example, if I were to kind of, let's say, um, be very with you right now, probably we can get through this podcast. I mean, there's no big deal at all to it. And tomorrow might be, you can just kind of pick up the phone and say, yeah, kya kiya tune, etc., etc., right? We can bullshit our way to some extent, but beyond a point, what's going to happen is that conversation is going to lack a lot of, the genuine feel to it, right? Which means, like, you will start losing interest over a period of time, saying that, hey, yaar, matlab, to bakas karega. You call him and he'll give you some nice, answers, ready-made answers, kind of a thing out there. Now, but more importantly, what happens is you and I will not be able to strike a genuine friendship, or there's a certain lack of that, that can kind of very easily seep in, into those conversations and those relationships, right? Over a period of time, let's say, if you were to look at it from a perspective of whether it is your employee and you, whether it is your child and you, or whether it's a spouse and you, if you don't have genuine conversations, honest conversations, you're going to be losing out a lot in translation. But more importantly, I think you'll start having a lot of trouble later on, right? It will lead. I mean, in your sense, I think immediately it will kind of, come to a fact saying that this guy doesn't understand what I'm trying to say. And maybe 1, 2, 3 meetings later, the client is going to turn around and say, like, nahi yaar, samajhta nahi hai usko, kind of a thing. But in, let's say, other relationships, it can have more damaging effects, right? So, I mean, personally, I would like to believe that every conversation needs to be as honest as possible to whatever extent that it can be. And that's when I think you will start building those, genuine affection for each other, right? Whoever it is, whatever it is. Yeah.
One little, can we go a step deeper into this? So what happens when I want to mention a truth, but I know it is going to lead to a temporary conflict? How do you see that part? Both of us have a genuine relationship, but if I'm trying to respect your feelings and I withhold my truth for the moment, do you think it's a good idea? Or do you think it's a bad idea? How do you perceive it?
I think it's a bad idea. I mean,
okay.
Simply because, I mean, okay. So I think also, okay, where I'm really coming from is the fact saying that I think it starts defining who you are as a personality, right?
Yeah.
Now, you might be probably a soft-natured person. You believe that I shouldn't be kind of, hurting somebody else's sentiment. Now, that's one way of looking at it. And more often than not, I think a lot of creative people tend to do that, right? But the other side of looking at it is saying that, okay, boss, I mean, if I'm being honest about it, it's not that I have to kind of hurt the other person's sentiment or feelings, right? But I'm just being honest about it, which probably has a far, what should I say, lesser ramification in the longer scheme of things, rather than, I mean, I would much rather be a nice person over a period of time rather than be a nice person just now.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think this is very critical in every relationship, whether it is a brand or even personally, right? I think that honesty is a very, very important aspect to it. Talking about brands, I think there's a nice interesting analogy that one can look at. which now is becoming a mandate, right, among social media influencers, for example, when you look at it, right, where ASCII has said, I mean, the advertising um, council has now come up with a set of new rules, which says now they need to kind of declare that this is a paid promotion and whatnot kind of a thing out there. Many years back, I remember Lily Singh, right? This is way back I'm talking about, when she was being, when she was really kind of, her podcasts and her I think YouTube series was becoming a little popular. There was this particular episode I was watching where I think there's a brand that came in and there were some plugs that happened and they paid her some monies. She was talking to kids, literally kids. I mean, that was her entire program. She was talking to 12, 13, 14-year-olds. But she actually went out and, put that on record saying that, hey, these are the plugs that happened here. And the brand paid me so much of money for this particular thing. I'm just kind of, putting it out there. Now, one might have a question. In fact, I did question saying that, I mean, like, how does it matter for a 12 or 13-year-old that, so-and-so person endorsing or not endorsing a brand, but got paid so much for this? But in the longer scheme of things, when you look at it, right, today, I think a lot of people respect her simply because of these small little, gestures that she has made over a period of time. So today, I think I would overlook every other personal choices that she has made in her life out there, but simply because she's an honest person. Right? Now, from a brand perspective, when you look at it, I think if brands were able to build this kind of a rapport with their consumers, consumers will not only kind of fight for the brands, but will not give in to rumor mongering, right? This whole fake business kind of thing can be taken to minuscule levels. I'm not saying it will completely kind of disappear,
Yeah.
but then what happens is your consumers, when they have that genuine appreciation or that love for your brand, they become your brand ambassadors. They start fighting for your brand. That's not an easy ask. I'll be foolish to kind of say that every brand should aspire to do this. There are a lot of inherent strengths of a brand, which kind of also kind of go on to play this particular role. But the fact is, if a brand is as, let's say, honest and committed for, let's say, for the longest period of time, then what happens is consumers, I think, start relating to that honesty at some level, and they would want to champion the cause of the brand. Now, similarly, let's say in people's lives as well, I mean, you will come across a lot of instances where people say you're a pain in the ass simply because, you kind of just shoot your mouth out and say whatever it is. But then over a period of time, they're also going to come back and say, this guy's honest, man, I'll trust him. He might say something immediately, but the fact is, like, he's a good guy. He's a loyal guy. He's a trustable guy. So I think that's really what one would want to kind of, go, you weigh the pros and cons of what you want to be seen right now, how you want to be seen, and therefore you kind of, choose whatever suits you at that point of time, I suppose. By and large, I found creative people to be a little more softer, and therefore, they tend to kind of not really, showcase their points of view. Yeah, they tend to kind of, keep it to themselves.
Yeah. You used a phrase, champion the cause of the brand. You didn't say champion the brand. My question was, anyway, the thing that was running in my head was that a lot of it boils down to intent.
Yeah.
So whether it is for a brand or a person or any relationship, an event, or whatever you're dealing with the world is at that point of time. And from wherever you're coming, whether it is the philosopher example you gave or the lawyer example you gave, the intent actually holds a lot of power in terms of when I'm talking to you. So if I'm trying to sound wise rather than actually probe you, that itself would color my question. Even though it's a very small line, it's a very thin line demarcating the two things. But I try and be very conscious of, okay, what is it that I'm trying to learn here, or what is it that I really want to learn? So how do you see intent in a world where we are so moved in by the pace of things? And so many decisions have to be quickly taken. So many challenges arise. So many conflicts are possible. How do you, which is a very soft skill actually to know what your intent is and how you're going about it. And are you being honest? Because you did mention that honesty is a prerequisite. So for me to know that am I being honest or am I just shooting my mouth off without understanding what I'm saying? How would you see intent in that context?
So I think what you're really trying to get at is, I mean, at least the way I'm seeing it, seeing this entire conversation flow is,
Yeah.
it's I think boiling down to who you are in the head, right? More often than not, what happens is I think intent really comes from that as well. Now, I can be a writer, I can be an entrepreneur, but my intent towards any project or any, let's say, the product that I'm developing is more or less defined by who I am. The way I go about it is defined by who I am. If somebody, let's say, has the smarts right now, probably would probably use ChatGPT to give you, a lot of ready-made answers, for example, right? Or there could be people like you who would want to inquire and dive deep into somebody's mind out there to try and figure out, what are the experiences that is kind of making this person who he is or she is,
Yeah.
right? Now, so the approaches might be varied, but the fact is, I think when you say intent, how you kind of go about it is more driven by the personality that you are, the person that you are, and which is many times a result of the experiences that you've had in life. The circumstances in which you kind of have put yourself through, either by choice or by circumstance itself, right? Now, a lot of these things rather, it gives you that kind of outlook towards how you want to pursue something. There could be a lot of intensity with which you can go about it. There's a lot of passion that could be associated with your cause out there. But net, what is it that you're going to be achieving and how you want to go about it, I think really is a definition of who you are, right?
Yeah.
There could be extremely aggressive ways of going about it. There could be very passive ways of going about it. But as long as the intent is there to achieve and fulfill what you have to achieve, I think that becomes very critical, right? And rightly, like you said, in today's world, I think it becomes a lot more difficult for a few of us to kind of go with the same aggressive intent that that, let's say, a few other people would want us to kind of do that, right? Now, I think it's up to you to kind of define that at what pace you want to kind of go about it. Eventually, I mean, you need to have that long-term perspective of saying that, okay, this is the goal that I need to achieve, and how I want to go about it is my definition of that entire scheme of things, right? Somebody might have a very, very aggressive way of going about it, and somebody might have a very relaxed pace of going about it. And that persona, I think many times comes through in your approach towards whatever that goal is. That intensity, I think, or that intent comes through in that kind of in the direction in which you are headed, and the pace in which you're headed, and the way you want to approach the whole aspect. In business, I mean, in entrepreneurship particularly, there's a set defined way about going about it, where people say, as an entrepreneur, you need to kind of be quick and cash in on a lot of things. Of course, I mean, yeah, sure, no denying that, because it is a very, very competitive landscape, and especially in areas like, let's say, technology, for example. You could be thinking of an idea and somebody's already implementing the same idea, right? I mean, the pace at which you need to move, for example, can be extremely fast, but that doesn't mean necessarily that you have to be an extremely aggressive kind of a person to kind of pursue that as well. You could follow it in your own smart way, So I think yeah, it really boils down to the kind of persona that you are, which kind of gives you that intensity or that intent in some form. At least I would like to believe that.
Okay. One last question in this series of thoughts that you're sharing with us. Can you share an experience where you were tempted to take the easy way out, but you actually held on, or something that was dear to you? But is there anything that you would like to share in terms of where it helped you to take the road less taken, kind of thing?
Well, I think my whole life. I
But
mean,
something which is more relatable in terms of people face a lot of issues in business, which kind of forces them to take decisions which they may not want to because they feel powerless in that situation or something like that.
so okay. So again, yeah. I mean, I will come to an example, but I think here again, the way you, um, um, I think entrepreneurship is also a lot about your attitude towards, the business itself. Why is it that you've gotten into whatever that you've gotten into, right? And uh, you know, which will kind of determine a lot of other decisions that you're going to be making in the course of that journey. Why I say this is simply because I've heard a lot of people, say this, oh, there are people who take the path less traveled and stuff like that. Now, but what if my product itself was, let's say, something which was very different, which was unique? It came to my head very easily. I was able to kind of crack it and go about it. And therefore, in that sense, when you look at it, it is really not a path less traveled as far as my head goes, right? I was able to kind of conceive it so easily and probably come up with that. After that, the journey, what you take from there on, I think that's a very different definition, right? So for example, in 2016, uh, I developed a cognitive search based tool to analyze purchase patterns and buying behavior. Now, given that ecom was kind of kicking in out there, ecom had already become the most convenient way of, buying, pretty much we were becoming slaves to our smartphones and laptops, Um, it was so easy to buy whatever that you wanted. Now imagine if there's a kida that comes into your head, it says, can I make it even more easier? Where, while both of us are having a conversation out here, imagine like, I'm seeing that wonderful, print or painting that's behind you right there. And all, imagine if I had to just either click a picture of that and put it onto an app, and imagine if the app were to tell you where to get something, if not the same thing, at least close to that, and the easiest way to buy it, the cheapest possible way to get it, and probably predict from there on, saying that what I could be buying further, my next purchase from where. How easy can that be, right? Now, while the idea sounded great on paper, we said, okay, let's kind of get onto it. We built the product. It was absolutely brilliant out there. It worked superbly well. But the market reality was something else altogether. I was talking to Amazon out there and they said, at that point of time, right? They said, I already have 140 million sessions happening out there. What am I going to do with your extra data that's coming in out there? I don't have resources to analyze my own existing data. What is it that new that you're going to be telling me, kind of a thing out there. Now, eventually it kind of boiled down to the fact saying that, okay, there is a certain set of audiences who probably may not, B2B audiences, who may not be as sophisticated as an Amazon, who probably could make, who could probably do well with data points like this that I was generating out there. Now, the decisions that one made after that, saying that, okay, this is the journey that I need to chart out now, and therefore these are the kind of people I need to go meet, and this is what I need to be doing from here on, was a completely different tangent. Maybe one was not equipped to handle that. Maybe one said, okay, no, yeah, maybe this is really not what I should be doing. Maybe somebody else. So I'm saying this is where the personality really starts coming in, right? As far as product development happened, it was brilliant. It just went like Mazka. You got it done. And then, like, when you want to kind of slightly pivot and say, okay, this is really what I need to be doing out there, perhaps, the journey is like, okay, okay, should I be doing this? Shouldn't I be doing this? Whatever, right? A lot of other things started coming to the picture there. And then, of course, the place that I was already working with, they said, okay, you're having enough fun in life out there, too much of fun right now. So please come back to whatever you're doing out there. I think, we can't handle you having so much of fun. So, and then you made certain decisions again, right? So now I'm saying this has nothing to do with the fact saying that one has intent in achieving something. This has nothing to do with the fact saying that, this is a less traveled path. The fact that I decided to kind of take a certain route was based on certain assumptions, decisions that one was making at that point of time. Good, bad, ugly is not the debate, right? So therefore, when something becomes successful, people say, "Arey, look at this. He walked down the path which was less traveled out there, and no wonder he's reaping the rewards of it." Right? Or if let's say, but in advertising, you always know there's a parity, right? When parity exists in the marketplace, there's an endorsement that happens, right? The consumer has choices. There's a certain ratification of the product category and so on, right? It happens. Now, in the internet terms, people say, in any category, you can have up to 6 competing brands. I don't know whether it's 6 or 60 or whatever else, right? But the fact is, there is always an endorsement. Some of the multinats you and I know will always say, yeah, it's what's that? New and improved kind of a scenario, right? I think it's just, yeah, when you become successful, people say, wow, that's a route you should have taken. If it doesn't become successful out there, people say, see, you went down a path which was, yeah, you should have kind of a thing out there. So I think those decisions are really based on who you are and what you are thinking at that point of time, right? And it has really nothing to do with where the journey is headed. Enjoy the journey as long as you can, as long as you're having fun with it, and then worry about the consequences later on. You don't have to always set an example for everybody out there. You enjoy whatever you're doing out there, and I think that itself is a big story in itself. Not too many people are able to do that.
Long-winded answer raised one more question in my head, although I promised that would be the last one. So I have one more question. Where does life or most people are lazy, call it destiny, but I think life itself is far more bigger and it has its own plans with us, since we are part of nature, and very, very specific attributes each one of us has. And how do you see life plays a part in what you just narrated? Where we are very sure about certain things, where we are sure about our point of view, the other person's point of view, but all of us together also may not be 100% a clear point.
It never is, no? It never is, no? As in, I'm saying we are results of such randomness that exists in the universe, right? So, it's going to be impossible for anybody to kind of have that very linear, structured approach to anything out there. My take on this entire thing has always been the fact saying that, okay, you are in a situation that you're in and you're wholly and solely responsible for it. And you're the only one who can kind of get out of it in whatever way that you want to, get out, right? As long as you're enjoying that trip out there, I think it's a big deal. You made it happen. You take it as far as you can, enjoy it as much as you can, and let it be. You are not the answer, to the universe.
Everything. True.
Yeah,
True.
We're such insignificant beings in that sense here. What are we trying to kind of, I can't change the consequences in any
I like
way.
the fact that you're saying we need to have fun with where we are instead of postulating that this could have been like this or that could be like this.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. What an amazing chat this was, and I'm glad that I forced you into this chat in the middle of the week.
I hope so. I hope so.
Thank you so much.
Anyway, thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was delightful.
Yes, thank you so much.
Maybe next time we'll try and we'll see you around. Yeah. Ciao. Thanks.